Hi, welcome to those who have gotten here. We're waiting for the moderator, Melinda, and she's having a little bit of trouble getting on. So I don't know if, Jim, you could help with that?
We'll send her an update right now.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My apologies for being late. I couldn't get into the room. I wonder if other people are having the same issue.
Yes, they might be because there's another Zoom meeting that was, Wes, if you could, or Jim, if you could re-up everybody, that might be the way to go.
Well, and it's the link that's on the MPTC website.
It's not that, yeah, so we switched the link. We've probably got a lot of people who aren't able to get on.
Hey, Connie, I just spoke to Sean. They're going to be back at about 1 o'clock from training. Could we bump it to, like, say, 1:15?
No, I have another meeting.
Do you? Oh, okay.
We could do it tomorrow if you want.
Earlier time?
Well, what time tomorrow?
Roughly about the same time. They said because they do 5 hours of training, and if they take it, it gets too long.
Well, no, because I have meetings at noon and 2:30.
Okay, well, that's to be rehearsed. We have to wait and see us at 3:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
I'm going to share a little bit about what we learned from that. So to get started, one of the things
Charlie, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, so Melinda was going to be speaking first.
I see Melinda Esty in the room.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and then if we have people that join us, they can come in late.
Yeah, I think because we had a different link.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Melinda Esty. I am a transit project manager with the Office of Transit and Active Transportation with MnDOT, and I'm delighted to moderate this morning and introduce our trainer, Charlotte DiBartolomeo. Charlotte, you'll have to correct me if I didn't get that right.
You're good, you're good.
Great. Charlotte is the founder and CEO of the Red Kite Project, which is a resilience building firm working in both the transit and medical industries to mitigate the impact of trauma and burnout of their workforce. Charlotte earned her master's in conflict transformation from the School for International Training Graduate Institute. She studied post-conflict reconstruction in Bosnia and Croatia. Charlotte has trained both management and frontline employees in conflict de-escalation, in crisis management, and employee engagement. Her training programs have reduced employee absenteeism, operator assaults, customer complaints, and accidents. In addition to her work at Red Kite Project, Charlotte is on staff at Drexel University in Philadelphia, where she developed and teaches a course in trauma-informed care. And we're delighted to have you, Charlotte, and we will be active listeners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Melinda, and welcome, Minnesota, to managing staff in turbulent times. I am familiar with Minnesota. I travel out to Minnesota quite a bit, usually with Metro Transit. We do a lot of work out there. And when I saw that we were calling this managing staff in turbulent times, I thought, that seems like an understatement. It's because the breathless pace of events that keep happening in our local and national communities and in our work are just fresh every day. And I don't know about you, but I wake up each morning and I think, oh, what am I going to be hit with now? And what's going to happen with my family and my friends and my colleagues and our nation? And so that is something that I know impacts everybody. And this kind of worry and concern and threat that we all seem to be in, that's extraordinarily stressful, right? And that is what I would consider to be toxic stress, and for many of us, traumatic stress. And that's why I'm really happy to be able to share this information with you, not just for your professional lives and how you're going to manage your staff and how you do manage your staff, but also for the quality of life that you're living with right now, and how can we raise the quality of life. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to share a little bit, and then we're going to break you into virtual groups, and those of you who are on site, you're going to just speak briefly, distanced from each other, about a question I have for you, because your information is vitally important too. It's not just a one-way street here. And then I'm going to get into some meat and potatoes about trauma. So what I'll be covering in the presentation is what traumatic stress is and how it actually, how it responds in your body and what it does to your body, like how it leaves literally an indelible mark on your whole system. And I want you to learn how to identify those signs of traumatic stress, and also, not just in your workforce, but in yourself. Then we're going to take a look at the strategies that you can do to build resilience for your work community, but again, also for yourself, because you're part of your work community. So let's get started. Why are we struggling? And maybe when I ask that question, you might say, well, I'm not really struggling, and that's okay, but I know that a lot of us are. And the way I see it, we are collectively under threat, right? We have COVID-19, we have racial inequity, and I know that in the state of Minnesota, there is political unrest. Just like here, we are a political battleground state, Pennsylvania. I'm right here in Philadelphia. And there's also economic inequality. And so all of those things impact some populations more than others. And that divides us. And I continue to see this divide. So I'm a crisis interventionist, yes, but I'm also somebody who works doing mediation and helping people to find common ground. And there seems to be precious little of that right now. So we know that frontline workers and oftentimes their family members are at high risk for the virus. It's just something that's emerging, this understanding of that. And of course, they're also at high risk because they're out front, right? And it's not just the virus. Oftentimes, the frontline worker is at high risk as being a part of a targeted population in terms of the racial inequity that is being uncovered in this country. Then, when we go back to the virus, I think about that, there's this inadequate PPE. Now, I know it's been a little different in Minnesota, although it may be changing now, but here in Philadelphia, when this whole thing started, we are 2 hours from New York, and we got hit pretty hard with the virus. And what was pretty interesting about this thing was that finally the country started to see transit, public transit workers as essential service workers. And it was about time. It was like, okay, are these folks going to start getting the respect? Are you going to all start getting the respect that you deserve? Well, yes, people were saying, yeah, you're all essential service workers, but you still ended up being in the back of the line for PPE. Here in Philadelphia, the SEPTA is our big company, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, and they were promised PPE, and then they got it pulled from them and it went to medical people. And unfortunately, the front line saw that as the manager issue, even though it wasn't. It was actually the local government that did that to management. So that created some really bad feelings and a sense of marginalization. Then there's the CDC recommendations. Yet again, they came out with something new. So they're always evolving and shifting, and not having that information and having a clear understanding of what's happening can make things really difficult for people in terms of feeling like you're under tremendous threat. And then there's the nature of the virus. I mean, I know that this is 4 to 5 days, usually it shows up, but there's also this 14-day incubation period and go on that long. And so you feel like a walking time bomb. And not just for yourself. Also, if you're exposed or feeling like you might be at greater risk to being exposed, you're always worried about coming home and what are you going to give to someone in your family that you love. And of course, the political unrest, the enemy imaging that is eroding our ability to find common ground. And I know that in Minnesota, this is certainly happening. Several of our trainers come out to Minneapolis, and we do a lot of circle processes, and we talk about what's happening for them and how they can be better at their work, but also in their lives. And there's such division right now. So it's hard for people to even have a conversation and to connect. And then let me just throw this out there. This working from home thing is definitely not what it's cracked up to be. I can remember when it was January of this year, and I was running around the country, I was flying around the country. I was in California, and then I was in Minnesota, and then I was in North Carolina. And I said to my husband, I just would like about 6 months to a year to just stay home. Wouldn't it be great if I could work from home? Be careful what you wish for. It was pretty quickly something that I saw was not a great thing, because you're sharing your home space with your workspace, and it can get ugly, especially for those of you who have kids. I think that trying to manage how you educate your children, and then also trying to share the space with them and figure out how you're going to create some division between the two is almost impossible. And what I've also seen is that people are working longer and harder because of it. So that's another reason why this feels extremely stressful. But let's just say something about public transit, because I think it's really worth saying about this specific industry. We know that public transit professionals are highly skilled at meeting short-term critical incidents. You're amazing. After working with some of the best companies in this country, I see how you are when there's a flood or a huge snowstorm or a big accident or a chemical spill. Everybody who may have their own issues, they all come together and it's all hands on deck, right? But there's like a clear ending to it. So it goes on for a couple of days or a week or two, and then everybody goes back to their normal schedule, and you can maybe have an after action meeting. But this is like, where's the end to this? Where there's this light at the end of the tunnel? And put on top of that, this fear around budgets. We know that the transit's budget is in trouble right now in many, many states across the country. And so there is this concern about how will we be operating next year at this time? So these things create a huge challenge for both the executive leadership and middle management and the front line. And it's really hard, I think, to manage all of this. So I would love to have people now just break up into small groups, if Wes could do that for us, and have you answer, what are your greatest challenges in your role, and how are you managing? So I'm going to keep this screen up. And for those of you who are in the room, I think Jim is going to just help you with that. Now, I get that those of you who are in the room, that makes it hard, but if you can just share a few things with each other distanced, that would be great. And this is going to be like a 5-minute breakout, not very long. So Wes, are you able to do that?
Yep, I will assign people to the breakout rooms automatically here. Charlotte, you'll be placed into a breakout room. You'll just need to join back the main room.
Okay.
Goodbye, everyone. Okay, the breakout rooms are now open.
Okay.
You may join.
What we learned is that people are really people, if they're online surveys, doing comment forms online. People are not interested right now.
Wes, I'm actually not in a breakout room. I'm not sure, and that's
Yeah, I
okay.
didn't-
I'm happy to stay. I'm happy to stay here.
Yep, you were assigned a breakout room too. As long as you don't join it, you're fine.
Okay, that's fine.
A couple of rooms here only have one person in them, but it's okay if I just move people to active rooms.
Absolutely.
Okay. So 2 rooms don't have people join. The rest of them have 4 people apiece.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And do you have a time frame on that for them?
Start about 11:16, so 11:21 local time.
Sounds good.
We'll bring everyone back.
I took that as a way to incentivize participation. I was created on the gift cards and grocery stores, so about that.
That's a good question. When we did a lot of the third contract surveys, we found that we would get better participation if we provided students, if we provided some sort of benefit or resource. So what we did is we have a program called CAP, it's program, and so we would do sign up events to the over 90 sign up for the $1 share, and then we would pay at the same time. Another thing we did is we distributed masks. We have a lot of our operators and our police department that would be on the site to distribute masks to our riders. And so we hand them a mask and then for our taxes. And we are doing e-surveying now for Network Connect, because we were providing like a little Gary?
Sure. On to our next presenter, Nick Lemmer. Nick is communications coordinator at Rochester. Prior to joining the city of Rochester, he was also communication. Nick has studied courses in marketing at Union State University. Yes.
So I show about 2 minutes remaining.
Okay. And so Wes, will
Yes.
people be able to speak in the large group for that when we return, just for a moment or two to get some information about what they came up with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will unmute everyone when we return.
Okay.
A couple of people have joined into the meeting who have not been assigned a breakout room, just so you're aware.
Okay. Hello, for those of you who just arrived. Sorry about the mix-up with the link. We'll be returning to the large group shortly.
Zoning, for example, land use policies, have a big impact.
Hey.
That's a good lady to Dr. On my way back. You'll live during this week.
Sure. Yeah. Don't matter. I'm not picky.
Jimmy John's.
Jim John's is great. Turkey Town.
Every time?
Yep. Thank you. Oop, that was on mute. So we got 11:21 now.
Okay.
You ready to bring everyone back?
Yeah, I think we should come back.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close all the rooms.
Okay.
60 seconds for everyone to return.
Just let me know when everybody has come back.
Yeah, in about 45 seconds, everyone will be back.
Okay.
About 30 seconds. Also, folks can unmute themselves as well, so they do have direct control of
Oh,
their.
great.
Oh, 3 seconds. All right, breakout rooms are now closed. Everyone is back in the general session.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I would love to hear maybe one or two challenges that folks talked about, if anybody's willing to speak up. Anybody want to say what it was that they shared? I can't hear who's speaking in the room. I just want to let you know that. Wes, I can't hear this person talking.
Tested positive and things like that. So we're starting to actually start losing some of our drivers. They're right now deciding to retire now that it's getting more, you know, we've gotten a lot more cases out there and things like that. So to be able to get new drivers on board and get them trained and all that kind of stuff, it's starting to get more and more challenging to encourage them to come back or you know, get more people on staff. And how are we dealing? We're trying to just kind of show them, again, like Ryan said, that we're trying to protect them as much as possible. But that's one of our greatest challenges right now is keeping staff.
Yeah. Thank you. And I just heard the tail end of that. I'm sorry. Anyone else?
There's a comment from Shelley Rockman that said our breakout group talked about the challenge of hiring to fill vacancies that had been left open during the time period we were offering reduced services and keeping current staff safe during this time.
It's extremely difficult, and it's also the perception of safety too, right? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, so let me go on and talk about the meat and potatoes about this thing and really share with you what's happening inside of us and how that collectively shows up. So we know that we all have stress in our lives, and you may have a particularly stressful day when you have to discipline someone or fire someone, or you have a big deadline, or you have a big presentation, whatever it is. That's typical stress that we have in our lives, in our everyday lives. This is not that, not that at all. What makes traumatic stress different is when your personal safety of yourself or your loved one is either shattered or threatened. So it may not be shattered, but it's extraordinarily threatened. And of course, obviously, COVID-19 falls into that. That experience overwhelms a person, and it overwhelms their resources. And when I talk about resources, I'm not just talking about our physical resources in our world, I'm talking about your internal resources. When you're under traumatic threat, what you'll find is your internal resource of problem solving or being creative or just cognitively being able to work something out go away. And that's terrible because now you're not able to be rational. And it creates a sense of helplessness and powerlessness. So if that feels real to you, that's what's happening. The thing about this is it literally rewrites your neural pathways to prepare you for the next possible threat that comes along. That's our survival instinct. That's how humans are made. So you're not in the same thinking the way you were before. And I'm seeing that. I often say to my husband, like, it feels like there's just a lot of madness happening right now. People are losing their minds, myself included, by the way, at times. I mean, I certainly am having my own challenges because I know that we have this thing called the autonomic nervous system. And that is responsible for your appetite and your breathing and your heart rate and all that stuff that you don't really think about. Well, maybe your appetite when you start to get hungry, and hopefully I won't talk too long and you'll be able to go get lunch. But that is the thing that actually goes into action when you experience trauma, that autonomic threat response. And that survival mode will now shut down your cognitive brain function. And now it's a bottom-up experience when you're in trauma. And your body doesn't have lots of creative ways to fix that. Your body has one of 4 responses that it will choose. And I'm saying it will choose because you're not rationally choosing it. And we call this the 4 Fs. And maybe you've heard of it before. And the 4 Fs are, you either go into fight mode where you're feeling so panicky that you're starting to, your fists are balling up and you're feeling that kind of tenseness, or you want to run, you flee. Freeze is another thing that happens. People just sort of get stuck for a moment. And then the last ditch effort for survival is that we fold. So if think of yourself being physically attacked, you literally, when you fold, that's you trying to protect your vital parts. So those are the 4 reactions that happen in our bodies. And they're because we have these survival hormones that race through and they help us to hit harder or to run faster. So our adrenaline, all that stuff is there to make sure that we live. So what happens, when the threat's over? Well, unfortunately, like I said, the traumatic experience will reshape how your brain functions. And those new neural pathways are like a superhighway. And they're there to deliver those hormones really quickly when you are back in threat mode, even if the threat's not real. It's just a perceived threat. So it releases those survival chemicals and you're there to protect yourself. And so how does that work? I'll give you an example. About 30 some years ago, I had an encounter with a bear in West Virginia when I was taking a nice hike with my ex-husband. We were walking through the Appalachian Mountains. It got really dark and there was a storm and a bear came out, and we were probably not as close to it as we thought, but we saw the bear saw us, and we took off. And we dropped our packs, and it was just a scary, scary thing. And when we left the mountain, we talked about it, we told our friends, and it was kind of living in us, in our narrative. And one day, as I said, I'm here in Philadelphia, one day we took a walk in a city park with our Cocker Spaniel, and my ex-husband was a few feet away from me. All of a sudden, he sees something on the path. He picks up the Cocker Spaniel. He starts screaming, "Bear, bear," runs past me. And of course, I follow him. Now, trust me, there are no bears in Fairmount Park, but my body memory was telling me to go because that's what we do. And so that's kind of an amusing story, but just in a darker vein. About 2 years ago, I was part of the Philadelphia Old City Fire, where I lost my home and I lost my dear cats. And it was a terrible time. And we got through it, and we survived, and we are in a new home now. But when I was out in California last November, there were fires, not that close to us, but I could smell the smoke. And my body memory was telling me that I was in danger. Even though I knew I wasn't, I was in danger because that's what my body was telling me. And so imagine people who have experienced real health issues, and then COVID-19 comes along. it's not just that their brains, their minds are telling them that this is dangerous when maybe some people think it's not, but their whole bodies are remembering that experience. And so it becomes an even bigger struggle for those of us who have had experiences that are negative. And so oftentimes one overwhelming experience will then pile on to another overwhelming experience. So here's the thing. What happens when the threat goes on seemingly forever? Hopefully it's not going to be, but it seems that way. We know that that sustained anxiety will significantly reorganize your brain chemistry. And it will cut off your normal problem-solving pathways, like not just during a threat, but oftentimes you're in kind of a long-term state of confusion where you're not thinking as clearly as you used to. It will often initiate threat mode when you might even be in a relaxed state. So it's sort of like you're sitting watching a comedy on TV and all of a sudden you start to feel nervous and you don't know what's going on. So we don't call this a superhighway anymore. Now we're calling it a hijacking. And you find that with people who have had long-term trauma. It's those traumatic effects, it's really hard to get past that. And so what we see is that people often lose control of their emotions more quickly. They will have panic attacks where they never had before. They will have trouble being in the present moment, hearing what somebody has to say. There'll be intrusive thoughts that you just can't stop from coming. So it's like images, it's flashbacks. And then there's also disrupted sleep and loss of appetite and depression. I'm wondering if any of this is sounding familiar to anybody. So that's pretty horrible to have to deal with, right? And, what people do, because we're adaptive human beings, we try to figure out how to quiet that anxiety. And sometimes we develop these maladaptive coping mechanisms. So we'll do things like disassociating. And disassociating is where you're in the present, but you're not in the present. Like you kind of have a total eclipse of emotions. But sometimes you're just not even quite there, even cognitively. I don't know if you've ever heard this from an operator or somebody who drives, but I've heard people often say to me, after my accident or after the assault, I would be taking my route and I wouldn't know how I got from one end of the route to the next. I think I made every stop sign. I think I did everything I was supposed to do, but I don't remember it. That's a serious form of dissociation for a driver, right? Because that can create all kinds of problems. But there's also avoidant behaviors that we do as human beings to try to quiet our anxiety. And we will sometimes abuse alcohol, abuse narcotics, we'll do process addictions like gambling, over shopping, some binging. And those are things that we do to distract ourselves from this really horrible feeling that we might be having. And sometimes we just withdraw. And you might see this in either yourself or a family member or your colleagues, where they just don't talk to anybody anymore. They don't want to deal with anybody else, And then there's also this thing called obsessive compulsive behaviors, which are things like, jiggling the door at night to make sure that it's locked a couple of times, or washing your hands over and over again, which of course we're being told to do. And so that's really hard for people who have OCD. But these are things that help to quiet our anxiety, and they may be fine in the short term, but they're not good in the long term. So how does it show up in your employee population? Because that's what we're here for, right? To talk about that. And I want to know from you if these are things that you're seeing already. I've heard you say in your big talk, when you were speaking back, that there may be increased absenteeism or actually people leaving and not coming back, right? People who were really reliable in the past are not there anymore. They just don't show up. Or you've got folks who do show up, but they're disengaged. So it's that kind of reduced presenteeism. And then, as I said before, there's that inability to pay attention, where you can't seem to follow directions. Because what's happening is, again, your cognitive part of your brain is shutting down. And so that's a potential for more accidents, obviously. But it's also a potential for more conflicts, because you may have a meeting with somebody and you've explained something to them, you've been really clear, and guess what? They don't remember it. And then they blame you and they're saying, well, you didn't tell me that. What are you talking about? And you know clearly that you did. But that's what the nature of this thing is and what it does to people. And so it does create this distrust with coworkers and managers, where they sometimes will literally view their manager as their enemy. Because when you're in threat mode, you have just like two things. You've got two emotions. One is you're my friend and you've got my back, and the other is you're my enemy. There's not really an in-between. And then finally, that threat mode just totally increases conflicts with passengers and customers. So you might be seeing that as well as supervisors and coworkers. So I am wondering, what are you noticing? What are your agency's challenges? And I'm wondering if we maybe don't have time necessarily to go into small groups, but if anybody can just speak a little about what they're seeing. Is anybody willing to talk about some of the biggest issues? Maybe is poor morale an issue? Or are you seeing resentment or more conflicts? Is there more distrust in the community? Wes, is it possible to open it up for a large group discussion?
Yep, I will ask everyone to unmute. There you are. Everyone is currently unmuted now.
Okay. So does anybody want to speak about what they're seeing in their agency that's becoming more difficult?
Someone live?
Hi, good morning. This is Bruce Howard. I'm Director of Marketing at Metro Transit in Minneapolis. And one of the things that's a challenge for us is that a lot of my staff is not in the office, haven't been in the office since March. And so they're beginning to feel really disconnected with each other. And I'm just wondering if there's a way or suggestion on how do you do that when you can't actually bring people together in the same room? How do you continue to build that team concept that's so important in a lot of the work that we do?
Well, hello and welcome from Metro Transit. And I will definitely be speaking about that. But if anybody has any ideas that they already are working on, that is great, because that's a big issue. And I can also imagine, I know that with a number of our clients that there's also the disconnect between those who are staying at home and those who are coming in, and there almost seems like there's two camps where there's resentment between the two, when in fact it's really hard to be at home. And I will be getting into why isolation is such a difficult thing.
Hi, this is Jen from Rainbow Rider. I'm the HR manager. I'm here with Brenda. She's our director, and so we're sitting in this session together. But in response to the issue that was just posed, my boss actually gave me a really great idea when I first started here. It was kind of a concept of having two jars, and one has the list of all of the names of our employees, and then I just randomly pick a name every now and then and call them and just kind of check in that way. And I wonder perhaps if companies who are more dispersed, because a majority of them are working at home or in different places, and it's not even has to fall on one person, but if there's maybe multiple people in a management who maybe have different teams or maybe feel closer to other employees or whatever, you can almost split up that list and just make a point to maybe call a couple every day and just say, hey, you've been on my mind. Like, we haven't talked in a while. How's it going? Is there anything you need from us? We've sent out this email or this memo. Do you have any questions on that? Just kind of having that connection just so that they know they haven't been forgotten about. That seems to help a lot.
That's great. That is a great idea. And I think that's important. And it also speaks to this idea where you don't have to try to get everybody, but finding those connections where you're connecting one-on-one. Sometimes those are the most important ones. And it's the reason why we have buddy systems and we have mentoring programs. So I think that's excellent. Anybody else want to say anything about that?
We also had a comment in the chat from Perry who indicated there's no mic, but they're experiencing more conflict than before.
Well, thank you for telling me that. And that's not a surprise, because we're in fight mode now. Okay, so let me move on to what I think is maybe why we're here, which is this idea of how do we build resilience? How do we make that shift from this place of everybody feeling like they're losing their minds to coming back together? And I want to say that I think that this word resilience has been knocked around for the last almost 10 years now. And there's a myth that has come up with it. It's this superhuman myth about being resilient. Like, you're an ever ready bunny. You just keep going. And it's about your character and how strong you are. And, you know, there's some truth to the fact that, yeah, character plays a role and a sense of purpose and all of those things. But there's also resources that we need in order to remain resilient. And if we don't have those, it's very difficult. The other part of that is, I think we don't give ourselves enough leeway to recognize that sometimes we get a little broken. We have things that become overpowering to us and overwhelming. And if we don't stop and recognize them, then we're just tapping into that superhuman myth, and it makes you feel really inadequate. And it reminds me of this thing called kintsugi. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of kintsugi, but it's the Japanese form of pottery making. And the way it works is, in Japan, if a piece of pottery breaks, unlike in other places where people may throw it away or they might just glue it back together, in Japan, kintsugi is where you take gold and you put the whole thing back together with gold. You glue it back together with gold. And I think human beings are like that. We do all break down. We all have those moments. But when we can come back together, it can create something richer for us. And we can become stronger. But it's something that's a process. It's not just like all the time, right? And I think also that the degree of your resilience is really built on your foundation of internal resources that you may have grown over the years. So if you haven't had those at this point, this is gonna be harder for you. But also, there has to be access to the external communal resources. And what I think it was Jen who was mentioning about, like, reaching out. That's building community. That's the way we can capacity build for resilience. Because, you know, building capacity really, it has to do with our primary relationships in the beginning. You know, when I think about resilience and I think about what it is that makes us strong, a lot of it has to do with what our first years were about. And this idea that we have two biological imperatives at birth. One is to survive, and the other is to make connection. Think about how right now those two things are really on the table, right? And the thing about survival and connection are that they're not mutually exclusive. But we know that our caregivers are the first ones who teach us about how to be in relationship. And they also help us learn how to co-regulate emotions, right? So when you're an infant and you're upset, you have a caregiver that's like, okay, it's okay, you're gonna be okay. And that's how we learn to soothe ourselves, soothe each other. And we know that people who have healthy attachments in childhood will seek out healthy attachments in adulthood. But it's been really hard to do that because people have lost their connections, right? So in times when there isn't a pandemic, when you're having a bad time, you will look for empathic people when you're upset, or a soothing voice, or a smiling face. And that helps us to calm down. But also, we have to learn how to soothe ourselves. And if we are considering ourselves to be the superhuman, ever-ready bunny, we're not going to be able to soothe ourselves very well because we're going to get drained. And so that's something to really consider. Like, how are you taking care of yourself? And are there still people you can access? So that's why I loved your idea of like one-on-one, because it's really hard to do this in a large group, particularly right now. And I also want to say about those early relationships, just because you may not have had a great early relationship with a caregiver doesn't mean you can't build strength and resilience. In fact, people do it all the time. And it's about actually transforming yourself and really doing the work, because many times we did not have good enough caregivers, or a caregiver was really compromised. So I'm not suggesting that, that's the only way you can be resilient. What I'm saying is it really is about relationships, because that's what our human imperative is to be in connection with each other. So that's why isolation makes things so hard. If we have supportive relationships and we have communities where we kind of come together, that's where people mirror and co-regulate their emotions. Think about when there's been an event inside your garage or just inside a particular depot, and people come together before COVID, come together and they kind of take care of each other. Or they also mirror each other and they get into panic mode, because that's what happens. We work off of each other. So that's a problem too. But the idea of social distancing is great because it stops the spread, but it really exacerbates people's panic. So people who are home, who've been isolating, they might be even more panicked because of that. And that's why I think it's really valuable to reach out to people who have been home for a long time. And then the challenge is also just finding ways to connect through the other piece to this. It's not just COVID-19. It's also all the political unrest that's happening and this inability for us to come together. So just, we think we're making connection on social media, and really all we're doing is creating more division. So those connections of a phone call or just trying to find a way to work with somebody. And it really is about small team building. Because if you can work in groups of 3 or 4, you're going to have better opportunity to have an authentic experience, as opposed to like 50 people getting together and they're on a call, and it's just really hard to do that, right? So that's an important piece. So how do you build a resilient workforce? I was a crisis interventionist for a long time, and when I think about where our country is right now, and when I think about where our work communities are right now, I would say that it's fairly standard to say that we're in crisis, that a lot of our work is in crisis right now. And so when you, as a crisis interventionist, what do? Well, you have to immediately help the person or group in crisis to build physical safety. And so in this case, it's addressing and mitigating the environmental threats and protect from further harm. And that could be PPE. It could also be, a security force that comes and protects that person if they feel like they are not protected on wherever they are. But it's also about recognizing that not everybody feels protected in the same way. And I think that's been made really clear this year, particularly in Minnesota, particularly in Minneapolis, that sometimes the police is not necessarily the answer for some people. So emotional safety is also at play here, how people feel about the safety. And I think when it comes to emotional safety, people need to know what's happening. This lack of knowing generates much more fear. And people go to the worst case scenario all the time. Like, that's just what we do as human beings. So that's important, to keep people in the know as much as possible. And that's hard because people are oftentimes dissociating through this, right? So they're like not paying attention. So you got to do this in a number of ways. But the other thing that I think is really valuable to remember is that we have to be congruent. Our words and our actions have to match in order for people to feel emotionally safe. If you're saying one thing and something else is happening, the trust gets eroded even more. And the other thing that's unfortunate is that people will oftentimes tell me or other people that they can't say anything to their management because they're afraid of retaliation, which is often not even true. There's not going to be any retaliation. But if that's how people are feeling, then it has to be a real thing that has to be addressed. So that's important. And then establishing this working relationships based on trust and empowerment. Do you remember when I said that trauma is about feeling disempowered and powerless? Well, so the upside or the other side to that is helping people to be re-empowered. And that means asking your team what you need and being honest about what you can and can't do. And then there's this idea of repairing relationships that have needed mending. This may be an experience that you've had where you'll hear somebody talk about a supervisor or a manager and tell a story about something terrible that happened to them with this manager. And it sounds like it happened last month. And actually it was 10 years ago. but they're still holding on to it because it's not safe for them. And so finding ways to repair those relationships, if you know about them, is vital in order to start to rebuild a more resilient workforce. But then there's the other piece to this, and that's just simply taking care of yourself and finding ways to laugh and shake off what you're experiencing. Because, you know, you're also a leader and you're trying to show people that you're okay, but it's also okay to show people you're human. And so finding ways to shake off those survival chemicals that get stuck in your body, sometimes humor can do that. And then just maybe exercising and taking care of yourself in that way, but remembering that you are part of this workforce, and that if you aren't resilient, it's really hard for you to help anybody else. It's like that idea of when you're flying and the flight attendant says, if we lose pressure in the cabin, make sure you put that mask on yourself before you help anybody else, because you can't help other people if you're not okay yourself. So I'm wondering what you're all doing, you know, in terms of how to build resilience, if anybody wants to speak about that. And it's not just in your professional life, like how do you take care of yourself in your personal life to get through to be in your professional life, and vice versa. So if we could open it up, that would be great. Anybody want to speak about what they've been doing to take care of themselves or their community? Has anybody been doing any exercising? Let me start there. Has anybody, or has exercise gone by the wayside like it has with me?
We have someone live.
Okay.
Hi, this is Luann Blyler at Paul Bunyan Transit. I was always an active member of Snap Fitness, would go to the gym every morning, 5 to 6:30, and then our gym closed. So I decided to start working out at home. So I found myself a couple of really good videos from a gal called Suzanne Anderson. And I've been doing those every morning, and then our gym opened. I went back to the gym, and then they said we had to start wearing masks. So I decided I didn't want to work out with a bunch of people wearing masks, and they gave you an hour restriction, and people complained about it all the time. So I went back to working out at home, and my workout at home has been far better than what I used to do at the gym. So it's been great. We can all do it.
And it helps shake off those survival chemicals.
It does. I can put up with all my people at work that don't want to wear masks.
Yes. Anybody else?
I thought perhaps Luann was going to say she's been working out with Suzanne Summers, but I'll be vulnerable a little bit also and say that my intention has been to exercise more because I understand wholeheartedly the benefits, but finding the motivation to do that has been a bit challenging.
It is. It's getting over that hump is so difficult. But we know that bilateral movement, even walking, can help shake it off. So I hear you on that. Anybody found other ways to just connect with someone or try to build trust in their work community that isn't there? I'm not sure if anybody's about to speak or if we're... Okay, well, I will then ask you if anybody has any questions about this particular presentation or anything that I can make clear, or just any comments. Okay, well, and then I think this will conclude, if you agree, that will conclude this session. And I do hope that everyone is able to manage through and recognize that your humanness is where sometimes we fall apart, and give yourself permission to do that and take care of yourself in that way. That's part of the human experience. It doesn't make you weak. If anybody has any questions later on, here's my contact information, and I'd be happy to share some of the information that I just presented today. Okay.
Thank you so much for a really helpful and informative presentation, Charlotte. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for keeping on doing what you're doing in transit. We really appreciate you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you from the virtual room, virtually live.
And Charlotte, you are getting thank yous from the chat. So.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you. I very much appreciate that.